Welcome back to another Saros video. I wanted to make this video kind of like my opinion on the game so far while it's still very fresh on my mind. Now, I will say I haven't beat it yet. I'm pretty close to the end. I'm about 11 hours in or so. Just finished Act 1. And by the time you're watching this video, I may already be done with it. So how's the game so far? I've had a lot of people come into stream, see it, and go, what is this game? This shit looks amazing. And then instantly I tell them that it is essentially the spiritual successor to Returnal. By the way, a lot of people, I'm surprised actually haven't played Returnal. I guess because it's a PlayStation exclusive, right? Or did it also come to PC? I can't remember. But I will say if you've never played Returnal, absolutely amazing game. But we're on to Saros now. So how is the game? I'm going to try to make very little comparisons to Returnal and kind of keep it as its own game rather than going back and forth and stuff. So first of all, the gunplay. Very fun. I'm a big fan of the bubble shield because the game's already kind of crazy bullet hell, right? In the beginning, you're just kind of dodging everything, but once you kind of go further and deeper into the game, you start getting different abilities. For example, every single different bubble actually does something, right? The blue bubble, whenever you absorb it onto your shield and it hits your shield, it's used as power for your special ability. The yellow ones, you typically just want to dodge through them because they offer really nothing good. The red ones, you can't dodge through them at all, but whenever you actually press the right bumper, you hit them at the right time, you can parry them and essentially have a giant explosion happen and send them flying back, which is really cool. So they all have their purpose, right? Which I really like so far. The grappling hook is also very fun, even though it's honestly kind of screwed me a couple of times in some fights. It's a little bit wonky when there's a bunch of enemies and all it takes is like one enemy to get in the way and send you completely spiraling off. I've died in the dumbest way because of that and gravity. Are you actually fucking joking me? I looked to the right to try to shoot the grappling hook to the right and it grappled onto the left. Now onto the guns themselves. Really freaking cool. While I will say there's a few that I rarely want to pick up, like the shotguns. I'm not really into the shotguns in this game. I don't know if you guys are. Maybe I'm just using them wrong. If you guys like the shotguns, let me know in the comments. But I haven't fucked with any of the shotguns really too much. But the smart rifle, the heavy round rifle, the 3-burst pistol, and especially my favorite, the repeating crossbow, are so damn fun. Honestly, when I saw like the auto target stuff, right, because it has an auto target, which means that all you really have to do is shoot in the direction of enemies and the bullets will instantly go to them. Some people may like that, some people may not like that, but not all weapons have that. There's a few weapons that, like the heavy round rifle, doesn't have any type of auto targeting, and the good thing about that is that you can aim for weak points. That's kind of where you get the extra strength that comes from weapons that don't have an auto hit, you know, an aimbot essentially. But the weapons that do have the aimbot are so freaking fun, especially the repeating crossbow. Literally, I'm gonna show you some clips here. You can just kind of shoot with its alt fire, which by the way, the alt fire has been an interesting mechanic, but I'll jump into that here in a second. But you shoot the alt fire and it sends almost like heat-seeking, tracking bullets everywhere, and it's so much fun literally to just shoot into a room and see if there's anything in there, and you can literally see the health bars disappear as it targets them, and it shoots so many. Honestly, I think it's going to get nerfed, even though I don't think it should, considering it's literally a single player video game, but I could see it maybe getting nerfed a little bit. So the alt fire, right? The alt fire is an interesting mechanic, especially with the PlayStation 5 controller, because the alt fire is a regular shot, but the way you use the alt fire is you have to hold the left trigger down halfway. Now, if you have the adaptive triggers that kind of harden it up a little bit, make the trigger a little bit harder when you press it down, that'll probably make it easier, but I'm not a big fan of that, so I turn the adaptive triggers off. Now, it is a little bit more difficult, right? It makes it a little bit more strenuous to kind of have to hold your finger in a weird half press down position while jumping around and moving and dodging and using your bubble shield. It can make it a little bit difficult sometimes. It does kind of get a little bit strenuous, especially if you're like hours deep, but it hasn't been so bad that I'm like, oh, I don't want to use this anymore, and I'm gonna pop on the adaptive triggers. The annoyance of the adaptive triggers for me is way worse than having to hold this button down halfway for like 4 hours a day. But the alt fires honestly bring a nice little bit of variety. There's a few weapons where I do think they're kind of useless, but for like the repeating crossbow and the heavy round rifle, I do really like them because, especially for the heavy round rifle, gives you a more precise aim, which lets you aim for those weak spots even better. For the repeating crossbow, like I said, it sends out these crazy heat-seeking, tracking bullets that just absolutely decimate enemies, especially when there's a ton of them. But overall, the gameplay is excellent. It's honestly been one of the most fun games I've played this year so far. How's the difficulty for the gameplay? Because a lot of people have been asking and talking about the difficulty, mainly comparing it to Returnal, right? Returnal was a pretty difficult game once you get deeper into the game. It can get intense. This game so far, in my opinion, isn't as bad. In fact, I would almost say most areas are quite easy. While there are some areas and there are ways to make it more difficult, for example, the Blighted Marsh or whatever it's called, the Acid Swamp area. That area is a bitch. I would easily say that's the most difficult area. And the way you make it more difficult is if you just straight up start a run from that one area by itself, by the time you get to the end, if you have bad RNG, you really are kind of getting shit weapons, not the best artifacts that make your run a little bit better and your character stronger. One thing I've noticed doing a run yesterday, literally from the beginning and then getting up to the last boss in that Blighted Marsh area, was that when you do that, the game becomes exponentially easier. By the time you get to the hardest area, you're already probably like level 30, have really good weapons, your artifacts are already full, so you don't really need much. All you're essentially doing is maybe trying to level up your weapons. And of course the game is a roguelite, right? You're going to be getting weapons in the run that are completely random, and you just have to hope that you get weapons you like, but for the most part you almost always do. There's a few runs here and there where I didn't get the weapons I like or really wanted to use, and they still went okay, which means, you know, generally the difficulty isn't too crazy in this game. But that's not to say there aren't a couple of areas and a couple bosses, and sometimes when you get bad area and a alpha that is a bitch to fight, oh man, that's when the difficulty can ramp up. It's interesting to see a game that's kind of mild in difficulty and then all of a sudden a huge spike with like one situation. Kind of makes you lock in, you know? It kind of puts you on edge of you never know when that terrifying alpha is going to show up, which I actually really like. Now, another big component to the game, obviously the story. How's the story so far? The story's a little fragmented. You're only really getting pieces before Act 1. Everything's very confusing. You get them through flashbacks, or there's a specific tree in the main hub that you go into. That's when you kind of get the most amount of backstory, especially on your character. One big comparison that I'll make between this and Returnal is, so far I like the character in Returnal more. I think she's a little more interesting. I think her story is kind of presented in a better way, but maybe that'll change once I get deeper into Act 1. So I don't really want to say instantly that her character is better. I just, so far, I think I like her complete character more than his character that's like half developed before Act 1 and getting into that. But I do actually really like Raul's performance in this. I think he's done an excellent job. Hell of a beard and hair combo this man has. I think he's a good actor. I think he's a good voice actor. I was actually a big fan of his from like the Funhouse days. I don't know if anybody used to watch that channel, but I learned of him from Funhouse, and I've really liked what he's been doing with the character. So I'm very happy to see him get this role in a video game, and a huge game as well. And I think he's doing a pretty damn good job. The character himself is obviously a badass, but mainly it's because of all the different actions that he can do. You know, the story's just kind of unfolding into why is it that he's the only one that can die out there and then come back and respawn, and nobody knows how it's happening. It's interesting. Another big story point happened at the end of the pre-Act 1 that I don't really want to spoil, but of course we're going to be streaming it on Twitch, so the link is in the description if you ever want to come watch live, or on the second channel, Prod Uncut, where you'll see more of like the complete story. The most interesting part, honestly, is the story of the world itself, going into some of these destroyed cities, seeing what they've been doing to the other echelons, which are the teams of people that go to the planet to explore it and to collect resources, seeing that most of them have been killed and tortured and transformed into weird art that's being made by the creatures that live on that planet. It's really interesting. Honestly, that to me is way more interesting and more along with the story. The art style in this game is fucking phenomenal. I've had people come into the stream and it's obviously trolls, right? It's people trying to rage bait, trying to get a reaction. I typically just ignore them, but I see them. I catch those little pussies with my eyes. That's a weird quote. I hope that doesn't get taken out of context. But I see them in chat and it's always like, huh, look, this game looks like a PS3 game. And then they get no reaction and then they don't comment again. And they just look like idiots, you know. But some people see this game and are legitimately, and I think, again, I think it's rage baiting, but some people might see it and think it looks bad. But the art style, the art direction in this game, from the enemies to the world itself, to the buildings, to the skybox, where you have a giant eclipse happening with the sun, it is just breathtaking every time I step up my foot outside the goddamn door and go into another run. While there are some areas that look worse than others, overall the game is just beautiful, man. But listen, I'm glazing the game, I know, but it's a great game so far. I just wanted to give my opinions on it because so far I think the game is pretty fantastic. We'll see how it goes with the story. The story, I think, between the main character and the side character that he's looking for, which I believe is like his wife or his girlfriend, I think is maybe the weakest part so far, which is unfortunate, but maybe it gets more interesting with something weird that happened at the end of what I was playing before getting into Act 1 was super weird and did actually kind of pique my interest a little more. And again, I don't want to go into crazy spoilers because people might want to play it, but it definitely, I can tell, might get more interesting. So far the gameplay is fantastic. Even though not all the weapons are great, it's still super fun. The story, while a little bit fragmented, is at least piquing my interest, and I want to learn more about it, especially more of the world and the gods that live in the actual world itself. I think is super interesting. The art direction is still beautiful, and I believe we're going to be getting into some new areas that are going to be looking even crazier. So listen guys, for me right now, it's an 8 out of 10, and I could only see it climbing and getting a better review once it's done. But of course, if you guys want to keep up with it, all the links are in the description on Twitch and on Prod Uncut, where you guys will be able to see a lot of it. Because here I'll mainly focus more on, like, you know, gameplay and stuff. I don't know if I'll end up making another video after this, but if I do, then it'll be a lot of, like, runs and final boss fights and main boss fights and stuff like that. So thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, a like is very much appreciated. Let me know what you all think so far of the game, if you have been playing it. It's unfortunate that it's not on PC. I know that's been one of the biggest complaints. Listen, I feel the same way. I just want more people to experience these games, and it sucks that PlayStation and Sony have kind of, same goes for Xbox, right? I think Xbox is kind of doing the same, kind of taking the bitch route and going backwards when it comes to not releasing games on PC. It's unfortunate, but thank you all so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of the video. Just keep shooting, just keep shooting, just keep shooting, just keep shooting. Okay. Last time they fucking shot me like that and fucked me up. I don't like the fact that I'm directly under it. We are absolutely fucking it up, though. Holy fuck! Get the fuck out of here, bitch! First try.